What is happening, people? Welcome back to the Scarfey Spurs Talk podcast. On this week's panel, I'm joined by fabulous guests in fact, to talk all things Tottenham and transfer news. So let's go through and introduce them. Firstly, Joseph, how are you doing? And please introduce yourself.
Yeah, hello everybody. Becoming a bit more of a regular on the Scarfey Spurs Talk page. Obviously, been doing a lot of videos as well whilst Harry's been doing his exams. But yeah, really looking forward to getting into all Tottenham chat, getting deep into transfers. I mean, it's my favourite part of the football, sometimes the transfer window. So it's always great to again talk with like-minded Spurs fans and get into it. So thank you for having me back again, Harry, and really looking forward to diving into it with you all.
No worries at all. Thank you very much for giving us your time. Gary, hello. Hope you're doing well. Please introduce yourself. Your first time on the podcast.
Yeah, first time. Thanks for having me. Long-term Tottenham fan since, 90s. 1991, I believe, is when I started watching football. So, fan since then. But I appreciate you having me.
No worries at all. Again, thank you very much for your time. Mike, welcome back on from Australia. What is it, just past 5 o'clock in the morning? So really appreciate that dedication. That is pretty impressive. I was talking to lads about that in the green room. So how are you doing firstly this early time in the morning? And please do introduce yourself.
Oh, g'day, mate. It's great to be back. It is a bit early, but any opportunity to talk Spurs is a good one. Although we can't get too excited because we know that transfer windows haunt us a little bit. So great to be back, and looking forward to chewing it all out with you. Plus, Thomas Frank, very excited about the new era.
Should be good. Thank you very much again for coming on. James, again, welcome back. I think it's your second time on the podcast. Correct me if I'm wrong. So how are you doing firstly, and most importantly? And secondly, please do introduce yourself to listeners.
Yeah, hi guys. Harry, second time. I think the first time was about this time last year. So I think that was also a transfer talk podcast. So a lot's happened since then. I used to work for the Tottenham programme and magazine quite a few years ago now when I was a journalist. I'm now a scout, a football scout. I scout for Harrogate Town in League Two. But yeah, obviously do bits and bobs on the Spurs show and stuff in terms of Tottenham stuff. So happy to come back on. Thanks for having me back on.
No worries. Thank you. So that is your panel for tonight. You've got me, I'm afraid, as host, Harry Scarfe. So if you're new to the channel, please do like and subscribe. If you listen on the podcast platform, please do drop us a follow and a 5-star review. Let's crack straight into it. Going to dive into different bits, a nitty-gritty kind of show, focus on outgoings and ingoings, any news that we get as well. I've been on the podcast. We'll start with some very recent news, and that is that Tottenham have announced Thomas Frank's coaching staff. So that was announced in the last few minutes. It just kind of includes all the new staff and what it kind of looks like in terms of their old roles compared to their new roles. So I'm going to read it out just now because it's quite interesting, because we knew that Thomas Frank would bring his own staff from Brentford. We knew also that he'd probably keep some, and that is exactly what he's done. So here we go. Here's the full list of Thomas Frank's new coaching staff. So you've got Justin Coquelin, the first team assistant coach. You've got Chris Halsam, who's head of performance and first team assistant coach. We've got Andres Jorgsen, who's the first team assistant coach. Joe Newton, first team coach analysis. Matt Wells, that's an interesting one, first team assistant coach. Cameron Campbell, first team individual development coach. Fabien Otter, first team goalkeeper coach. Stuart Lewis, who's gone from under 18s coach to the first team academy transition coach. Dean Brill, from head of academy goalkeeping, has gone to first team assistant goalkeeping coach, and Rob Birch has left. Joseph, what do you make of this shake-up? It's been reported this by the Spurs Express.
Obviously some of those names don't mean too much to me, as I don't know too much about each individual. Obviously, I know that Thomas Frank has brought a lot of his own coaching staff with him from Brentford. A lot of key people coming with him across, which again, it's interesting to see a big shake-up. I mean, it looks like it's been kind of a big shake-up from top to bottom at Tottenham, really, in terms of obviously Vinay came in. You've obviously got at the CEO, at the board level, many people have also gone. Obviously Donna Cullen leaving as well, which was a big departure. And I guess this kind of continues that, seeing a lot of new names and a lot of people being promoted, which is good to hear as well. A lot of people moving up within the club, which shows they're obviously making good progress. So again, obviously names specifically maybe don't scream out to me or anything, but it's still interesting to see. Obviously, a lot of moving parts at Tottenham. It's been a very busy so far, although maybe not on the players' front. It's been a very busy time around Tottenham at the moment.
Certainly is. Gary, can I ask you about that? And I don't know about you, but I feel the same as Joseph. Maybe like names don't really stand out to me, but is there anyone in there that you may be surprised to see in there or happy to see in there?
The Tottenham boys, really. Matt Wells, I'm pleased that he's staying. Pleased we're promoting within as well. I think that's always a good sign. Happy goalkeeping coach. I've heard a few things about him. Otter, is it Otter? Otti? Otter. Yeah. I've heard he's pretty good, but outside of Justin Cochrane, they don't mean a huge amount to me either. However, I'm impressed that the club's actually gone and got the people that clearly Thomas Frank wants, because I think that's largely the issues we've had in the previous managers. You know, Postecoglou didn't have all of who he wanted. You know, Conte was quite known for not having everybody, Jose as well. So I think that's a good sign. And whether that is Daniel Levy actually doing it, I'm not too sure. Maybe it's Vinay having some influence there, but I think that's a good sign to start with, to get those ideas down, because we could all have our idea or style of play, but if we've got to teach it to our coaches as well as our players, there's a difficult aspect if you're already coming in as a collective team that know it. I think we're already one step ahead. So yeah, pretty good.
Yeah, thank you. Mike, do you agree with Gary in terms of it looks like that Thomas Frank has got, you know, the coaching staff he wants, and that's really important, isn't it? When you have who you want. I think it was like Mourinho didn't get, for example, couldn't bring the system he wanted to the club, and I think we suffered as a result. So it's really important that Thomas Frank knows a lot of these individuals and clearly wants them at the club.
Yeah, 100%. I think Ange had a philosophy where he didn't bring coaching staff with him wherever he went. It was sort of a thing that he did where he wanted to have a new opportunity to make ground afresh. And I think, to be honest, it's been a bit of a mistake because he's looked like a bit of a lone wolf his whole spell at Tottenham. And, you know, he's just been doing his own thing. And I think how the club is structuring up, to both Gary and Joe's point, looks like a lot more of a play for unity. Vinay, it's not just a talking head anymore. It's Vinay, it's Levy, it's the usual, but then there's Frank as well. And I think they're going to work together quite nicely. And you can already see that from the way that they're operating in the transfer window. It looks a little bit more together and collective, and the voices coming from the club. So it could be aspirational because I'm very far away, but we'll see what happens. But yeah, I think it's going to be good for Frank and his whole crew. Just to note, Cochrane, very highly rated by Brentford, and I believe they were looking to appoint him as the new manager there as part of succession planning until he got that over the line to bring his crew with him. And good to see Matty Wells continue because he's highly rated too. So, yeah, I think we've got all the chess pieces in the back room, right? I think it's now what can they actually do in the transfer window to give us some confidence.
100%. James, I'm going to ask you, because again, Mike mentions it there, about Justin Cochrane, our new assistant manager, who was assistant manager as well at Brentford. Do you think that's really important that he, you know, was managed to bring him to Tottenham? You know, didn't stay at Brentford, because it's a possibility we could be talking now. He could have been Brentford manager. You know, Thomas Frank went from Brentford assistant manager to then being given the chance as manager, which for them in the end really worked out well. So I think they would have wanted him to be the manager. Who knows? We'll never know. But do you think that's really important that he's come with Thomas Frank? Obviously, he's number 2.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, he's got a good reputation as well. Even before Brentford, he was a England under-17s as well, where he sort of gained a very good reputation doing that, and he's worked his way up, and he deserves his chance. And he should be coming with Frank, so that's a big positive. I agree with the other lads about Matt Wells. Like he deserves to stay on and carry on his good work. And then obviously, don't want to be a snob about my scouting, but there's a few people. Joe Newton, the analyst. I mean, a lot of those names I didn't really know, but I've got him on LinkedIn, and he's also got a good reputation. So football's now very going the way of the importance of analysis is getting more and more, data and all the rest of it. With Brighton and Brentford who have sort of paved the way with that. So that's also quite encouraging to see that he's come in as well. The only thing that does worry me about the whole setup is maybe a little bit of inexperience, just the fact, we haven't got a coaching setup now that's managed like in the Champions League and stuff, but there's no reason why they can't succeed.
100%. That's really interesting to hear, actually. So thank you very much, James, for that one. So firstly, I want to move on to, or next, should I say, Mohamed Kudus. So just go over the latest kind of news, and then we'll get into him and just what he can bring to this Tottenham side if we do sign him. So the latest news. Firstly, Standard Sport, they report that Mohamed Kudus has arrived back at West Ham pre-season training today on Monday as he awaits the move to Tottenham, with both clubs locked in intense negotiations. Alex Crook from TalkSport reports that Tottenham's bid for Mohamed Kudus included add-ons that only kicks in if they win the Champions League or Premier League. I'll tell you what, I'll take a pause here. And Gary, you're shaking your head. I'm going to come to you. I mean, that's just unrealistic, isn't it? Let's be honest. As much as we love to sit here and go, come on, we can do this, we can achieve this, it's not going to happen, is it?
Well, unless we stick Footy Manager on now and they'll jump on. We could probably do it on that, but it's just unfortunately the way the club is. In my opinion, they're obviously asset rich but cashless. Don't have much cash, and I think they're just looking for any way, as they always are, to try and cut a deal. It's unrealistic at this stage, but I like the ambition, especially in the video that Vinay and Daniel Levy did, where they want to win the Premier League and they want to win the Champions League. You know, we all want that, but we need to see the ambition, and the ambition is what they want. How much do they want? If he's the right man for us, just go and get him. But yeah, it just makes me laugh when I read it, because it's just Tottenham all over, and I'm sure if we're laughing as fans, other people are. And it kind of just sums up a lot of how we are as transfers. You know, look at the amount of people we've had that we could have got cheaper, Grealish and all sorts of people. And we just don't ever seem to stump up that money and just go, right, they're the people we want, we're going to go get them. And that to me is ambition. I think if we showed the same ambition we do on the commercial side of things, but on the football side of things, we certainly wouldn't be in the position where we are now.
I totally agree with you. That's the thing. It's all right to sit here and go, yeah, we want to win the Champions League, and yeah, we want to win the Premier League after winning the Europa League. That's fine. That's good. It's it's necessarily achievable if you do the kind of action and you sign players and you show ambition, as you say, Gary. But we're not. We're talking first part of transfer window shut. Arsenal moving to get deals done. Liverpool moving to get deals done. Both teams signing a lot of players. We finished 17th last season, and the only signing we've made is signing Matthias Tell, who was here last season. So that's not really an improvement.
You look at the people above us. Manchester United above us already done 2 or 3 deals already. Yep. Instantly. Mm-hmm. They identified the person they wanted. They went and got him. Whether we agree with the price for Kuna, I think he's a great player. But they went and got him. They've identified who they need, where they need strength, who they don't want at the club, is what's been reported, and they're being moved on. The problem I think we have at Tottenham is this constant 18-month recycle. It's rinse and repeat every 18 months, and Ange got 2 years, but on average it's 18 months, and it's this constant rebuild, and we don't ever seem to have a set. This is what we want. This is who we want, and we go and do it. It's a constant wait. Here, here's 10 quid, or the person wants 20 quid. Well, here's a tenner, and I'll maybe give you £5 if I, run 200 miles, which is never going to happen. It's laughable sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's certainly one way of putting it. Indeed, Joseph. Before we move on, going back to Mohamed Kudus, I want to ask you about, are you concerned that we haven't? Well, I don't think we signed anyone. I don't count really Matthias Tell's a signing because he was here last season. Does that concern you? Is it cause of concern? Is it time to panic, or do you have full faith the club will get these deals done eventually?
I never have faith in Tottenham. As much as I wish I did, I never can. But I'm not too concerned. I mean, I would have preferred us to move quickly in the market, the same as what Liverpool have done, what Manchester City have done. Again, Arsenal looks like they're kind of getting going now. Obviously, still not completely, made any proper signings other than Zubimendi, I think, who's come in, but they're obviously very active. And it looks like Tottenham are kind of, I don't know, maybe we're in a bit of a tough position because it doesn't look like we're in a financial position to go and sign whoever we want. Doesn't really make too much sense in terms of all, the idea of us only having, being asset rich and not cash rich. But if that's the situation, I mean, I read somewhere that it looks like Tottenham are trying to focus solely on this Mohamed Kudus deal before we look at doing any other business. because they're trying to get this kind of one done. And again, without selling players, we can't really buy anyone else. So it's been a tough start to the window, definitely, but I'm not completely concerned. There's still many players available. There's still, tons of players that we could look at, and some players that I would still like us to get haven't gone anywhere yet. So I'm not too concerned. But in terms of Mohamed Kudus himself, I'm quite excited. I think it is a profile of player that we are missing slightly. I don't think we have a true kind of one-on-one specialist within our team, or at least one to a really high caliber. So I'm quite looking forward to what he could possibly bring to Tottenham. The only thing that does concern me a tiny bit is obviously what you said about the us trying to scrimp and save on every single, a moment of every single part of the deal. And the fact that eventually maybe West Ham will go, you know what, this isn't going to work. Let's just go find someone else who might be willing to buy him. And I know Kudus is obviously giving his priority to come to Tottenham, but eventually he will accept somewhere else if another option became an option for him. It's not the fact that, I don't think he's going, I'm staying at West Ham or I'm going to Tottenham. I think he would be happy to move somewhere else. And I know West Ham would be much happier selling him somewhere else. So it's one of those where it's like, I think we do need a bit of urgency. We do need to try and get this deal done because it could slip through our fingers. We've seen it happen many times for different players. And, like Gary said, with Grealish, the likes of, players like that, where we've almost got the deal done and then we've backtracked and we've lost it. You've got to, if you really want this guy, if he is your main priority, get it done, because that's, soon enough that will fall through.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll go back to Mohamed Kudus. Graham Bailey reported today that Mohamed Kudus rejected a late approach from Bayern Munich because he's set on completing a Tottenham transfer. That's the only move he wants. Kudus has informed West Ham he's only focused on signing for Tottenham. Joseph, you've given your thoughts. So Gary, I'll come to you again. Do you want Spurs to sign him?
I think I like him as a player. All my in-laws are West Ham fans, so I've watched him a lot. Watched him a lot last season, and I wasn't overly impressed with him last season. First year, I thought he was very good, very, very good. I've watched him quite a bit at Ajax as well, so I'm a big European football fan. So I like that side of him, what I've seen. Last season, not so much. If that's the only person that we're in for, I'd be happy, but I think there are potentially better options out there. I think that we, at the moment, we want to get excited by a transfer, because for weeks it was all about Eze, and then all of a sudden Eze is now going somewhere else, and then we're all like, okay, who can we get excited about now? And I think there's that excitement of us trying to get something over the line. Does he fit to what we need? Potentially, but based on what he did last season, I'm not overly excited. If he came and we got the first year Kudus, then I'm happy. I think there's potentially better options out there for that type of money. But again, I don't know the strategy of where things are. I think we've certainly previously we do a lot of deals in quietly. We don't talk about things quite a lot, and then all of a sudden, Mattis Tell, for instance, in January was coming to us, then he wasn't, and everyone was like, oh, we didn't want him anyway, and then a week later he turned Man United down and he came. So things change so quickly. So yeah, I'm 50-50 if I'm honest.
Okay. Mike, talk to me about Mohamed Kudus. Does he improve our attack?
Certainly does. Good profile for the squad. I think he's 23. He's got Premier League proven experience. As Gary says, maybe not proven in season 2, but season 1 was impressive from what I saw. He's got that kind of dribble, tight control, game-breaking, one-to-one pace and swerve that I think we desperately miss. Would he be the first signing I'd go after for a huge deal that looks like it's going to be 60 million plus? Probably not. I think the squad could have really done with an Eze. I'm still actually profoundly devastated we haven't got Eze over the line, because I think he's going to be a great. And I don't know if anyone saw, Eze's just got back from playing chess against Richard Branson at his own house and beating him. Did anyone see that video?
I did see that.
Yeah.
That's I mean, it just made me like him even more, and I got even more upset when I saw that video. I thought, Jesus Christ, we've got a chess prodigy and unlocking weapon in the midfield. But yeah, Kudus is good, but I just don't know whether Kudus is better than other players who play in similar positions, even in the Premier League. Like, you know, I looked at Semenyo. I think I love him. I know he's the other side, but he's very talented. Daniel Marlin is sort of a similar player for me, who I think is probably better. You know, he's good, but is that your signature signing that you want to kick off your Tottenham era with? If it's the only big one, I'd be very disappointed in the window, to be honest.
All right, thank you. But you make a good point. Like Semenya, he's now signed a new deal because we, fluffing about, messing about, exploring here, interested here, admiring here, rather than, boom, bid. And I know a lot of it's reports, and I'm sure a lot more to it than that. But I just feel like he might have never wanted to come to Tottenham. You just don't know. But I just feel like we're always like the outsiders, and we were sold the dream, moving into the new stadium, be able to compete with top clubs. I believe his words, with the top six, with the best teams in England, best teams in Europe, on and off the pitch. That includes on the pitch with football success and then transfer market. Well, we haven't done either of those things. So, as far as the fan forum was concerned, that I think will be a decent question. But James, I've got a slightly different question to you. It's got a YouTube comment that's come in. It's quite interesting, one that might require a bit of thought. Dylan says, do you reckon the whole idea of Kudus only wants Spurs is actually true, or being made up by his agency to create urgency for another club to come and sweep him up? I mean, Spurs need urgency, that's for sure. Do you believe that?
I'm not sure I'd believe that, because obviously Chelsea were interested as well, weren't they? Surely he'd be getting more money with that lot. But yeah, I mean, you see and read a lot these days, don't you? Not only in the press, but social media. There's so much noise about everything. It's just frustrating, isn't it? Like you say, why can't we show some conviction and just make a bid and show some intent and go in? Daniel Levy talks about, we need to win the league, we need to win the Champions League, but you need to back that up with, your wallet. And we all know that he doesn't do that. I think as long as these owners are still here and Daniel Levy's the chairman, nothing's really going to change, is it? And clubs know what he's like, and he has that reputation. He must be a nightmare to deal with. The deals now always seem to have, be paid in installments and bonuses and all the rest of it. I read somewhere that the Kudus bonuses, West Ham think they're unrealistic. So they're probably things like they'll get 5 million if we win the Champions League or something, which, is unrealistic. I'm just speculating there. But, I mean, if he does genuinely want to come to Tottenham, that's great. And we should sign him. And I think he only improves our team, but it's just it's just frustrating we haven't shown some conviction and gone in for Eze. Or surely Frank should be having a word with Embreno, saying why are you not coming with me? Champions League at Tottenham, there's no Champions League at United. I find that one a bit strange as well, but frustrating is the main word I'd use for the transfer policy of the club, and it's been like that for years, hasn't it? Let's face it.
It has. James, I've got another question for you. Do you think the wage structure is a big problem? Because I view it as it holds us back. It's, doesn't allow us to retain top players, doesn't allow us to attract top players. Because players are, incentivized by money, aren't they? We see a lot of players moving to Saudi Arabia. I mean, I personally believe that's solely only money based. I don't think there's much more to it than that. So I think they shouldn't be, but they are money motivated. So do you think the wage structure is a big problem?
Yeah, well, it definitely ain't this lifestyle, is it? It's definitely the money that's attracting people to Saudi Arabia. So no, I completely agree. I mean, I think we are bottom of the wage to ratio in the Premier League, which is very disappointing for a club that's aspirations are as high as they are. Again, we've already mentioned in this podcast about that kind of, I don't know, flirty video of Vinay and Daniel Levy just kind of talking each other up and saying, oh, we want to do this, we want to do this. If you want to win the Champions League, like James said, if you want to win the Champions League, if you want to win the Premier League, you've got to put your money where your mouth is. And Tottenham don't do that. And we don't do that in wages either. I know, James, you said about Mbermo possibly coming to Tottenham and hoping Thomas Frank could kind of bring him along. But obviously some players are very money driven. And I think he'd probably be offered double the amount at Manchester United than he would be offered at Tottenham, as well as obviously Manchester United historically being a bit of a bigger club than Tottenham. But it's tough for Tottenham if you're not willing to pay the same wages as other clubs. Players are less likely to come to Spurs. I mean, we can win trophies, we can do whatever, but if you're going to get paid an extra £50,000, £100,000 a week somewhere else, you're just going to take it. I mean, it's simple. I mean, if I was a footballer, I think I'd be the same because it's more. Sometimes football is more than just playing something you love. It's about your family. It's about, you know, providing for everyone around you, and you know, maybe where you're from and things like that. There's, you know, you're very lucky to be in that position, and you got to make the most of it. And unfortunately, like you said, you know, we've been bottom of that wage to revenue ratio in the Premier League, and it's definitely come to fruition from that. You know, seeing where we aren't getting the cream of the crop in terms of the players, and you look at some of the wages that some of these other players are on, it's nowhere near you know, what the Tottenham players are on. Or sorry, it's completely out of the realms of possibility for some of these Spurs players. I mean, I think Van der Ven is on something like £50,000 a week, something tiny like that. And I mean, he's one of the best centre backs in the Premier League, basically. And if we don't hike that up to 150 to 200,000 in the next coming years, he's gone. He's going to go somewhere where he's going to go get £250,000 a week. So Tottenham really need to address that. And if Daniel Levy's not willing to do that, which it doesn't seem like he will be, you need to look, you know, we need new ownership. We need somebody who's going to come in, who's going to inject a lot more money into the club, and is going to kind of put us on an even keel, at least with these top teams, because they're going to be willing to pay that.
You look at his appearances last season of 32 games, is 3 assists. So I know you had a point raised there, amount of dribbles that he did. And dribbles are great. We can dribble, but if there's no consistent end product.
Is that about Mohamed Kudus?
Yeah, there's a question just popped up there, or a statement popped up on the question now, saying that was about the most dribbles that any player in the past 2 seasons. That's fantastic, but last season there was 3 assists out of 32 appearances. In total, the whole time he's been at West Ham, 65 games he's played, 9 assists.
I think the thing you've got to consider with Kudus is it what Thomas Frank wants? Is it Thomas Frank kind of coming out and going, look, this is the guy I think would fit really well into my system? I think, again, the one thing that you could say that is completely different with Eze is Mohamed Kudus is a kind of direct one-on-one winger. He likes to kind of come up against his defender and try and beat him, whereas Eze is more of kind of cut inside, link-up player. He's got a great feet, but maybe isn't as quick, maybe isn't as skillful as what Kudus can be. And also, again, you know, Kudus, there's just very different players. So I think if Thomas Frank's kind of going out there and going, look, Kudus is the right player for me, then I think we've got to back that, and we've got to say, you know what, if he believes that he can create something in that, then we should be happy with that. And I'm quite excited to see what Kudus can be. I thought he was a great player at Ajax, like you said, Gary. Yeah. And that first year at West Ham, I thought he was terrific. Last year, a bit of a down year, but West Ham were very poor last year as well. They had some really big struggles, and I think we've got to think of what could he do around, you know, some of the players that we've got. I think you know, he could be a great player.
Like he, like I say, the first season looked great. I think he just dropped off last year. Didn't look the same player. You know, for me, my number one would have been Eze. You know, last season he had 8 assists and 8 goals. You know, he tore us to pieces at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. He was unplayable at times. But you know, Kudus he's a great player. I'm not disputing that. However, it's not the one we had last season that I would be over excited about. For me, Eze would have been the guy I would have thrown everything I had at getting him, and especially after seeing him live and the way he just ran that show. The
one thing I'd say about Eze, because obviously I remember I said in the group chat, Harry, about how I bet Eze ends up going to Arsenal. This before any links of it. Everyone was kind of saying about how, you know, I can't wait for Eze to be at Tottenham. And I was like, you're saying all of this? No, I'm not an Arsenal fan. But I had a feeling.
Eze.
Like
Eze. I don't
know. I was behind the dugouts for that game, and a lot of the young lads, a lot of young kids he'd come over and was signing autographs, and they were asking him to join Tottenham, and he just sort of laughed. And someone said to me, I'm pretty sure he's an Arsenal fan, he ain't coming here.
Then again, but there's also been other rumours of him having like a box at Tottenham at one point and all of his family being there. Yeah, it's hard to know. But the one thing I would say, because obviously there was loads of links of him going to Arsenal, and it looked like that was kind of getting there. I mean, obviously Arsenal looking to like get Madueke, obviously an old Tottenham player from our academy, but Madueke possibly going there. You've got Rodrigo who could be going there. Obviously Gyökeres. Zubamendi's already signed. They're looking to get in Christian Mosquera from Valencia. It's like all of these players, do we think they're going to be able to get Eze as well? I mean, there's also the talk of Waneri wanting game time at Arsenal. And again, if Eze comes in, all these players come in, he's not getting it. So it's thinking maybe Eze becomes available again for Tottenham later down the line, possibly.
But again, I know what you totally mean, Joseph, but that's the way that Spurs will look at it. But I think that's poor. We're left off what the scraps, what's available, what Arsenal don't want. I think it tells you all need to know. We finished 17th in the Premier League last year. As far as I'm concerned, we should be hammering in that transfer market to get deals done to avoid a repeat. Okay, it was a good season, I think, overall last year because we won the Europa League. We don't want to be in the situation we were in the league. We want 100%. To do better. Levy says in his statement, we want to be able to compete on all four fronts. We want to win the Premier League, we want to win the Champions League. But by the way, you're not having any signings. So good luck. Other teams around you are going to sign players. Try and improve up the table. Well, it's going to happen. That's the problem.
I completely agree with you, Harry. I do. But again, I'm more just looking at it as we know what Tottenham are, and we know that that's not going to change right now. So as much as I agree with you and I want urgency, again, this whole thing with Kudus and how it's gone on for about a week now, it's just thinking, I mean, it literally looks like we're pretty much at their valuation, but we're just kind of a tiny bit blown. It's like, you're basically there, just pay it, just pay the fee, pay what they want and get him through the door. And that's what's very frustrating. But we know how Tottenham operate. We know how Daniel Levy operates. He's from what everyone says, he's one of the hardest negotiators. So nobody really likes working with him on these deals because it's just so frustrating. But we know what Tottenham are going to be, and we know that that's where we're going to make our moves. And we're going to make moves with players where it's an opportunity rather than going out and going, we want you, you're coming to Tottenham. That's how other teams operate, but we know Tottenham don't.
Certainly do. Mike, I want to bring you in on this Kudus conversation. Would it be fair to say that there are better options out there? But you still think that, you said that you think Kudus would be a good signing. But what I will say is, do you think he's like a good alternative to like Eze and Mbama, although we may think they're the better players?
Look, he's all right. Sorry, something's fallen in the kitchen there. Now, look, I think he's solid. I just think it's utterly bizarre that you end up in a situation where your number one signing that you're going for plays for West Ham. And how many deals have they done with West Ham over the years? And as we said, Levy is not an easy negotiator. We should be proud of that in a way, but in a way we're really not, because the structure of the wages and the club and how it's run financially doesn't ever lend itself to a position where we could fight for on four fronts next season. So I think Levy is speaking aspirationally, and I think what you're going to see now that Frank and the players are all back for pre-season, I think Frank and his team are deciding who's going to be sold and who goes back out on loan, and they need the cash flow from this actual period right now to start to be more active in the transfer window. So I think actually in the next week, we'll see some more outgoings and potentially some more traffic, but it's not going to be Arsenal-like traffic because this transformation, if they're ever going to make it to being a football club and not just a business, is going to take probably 3 years to change the finances internally, to change the strategy, to become a proper football club. It's not going to happen overnight when you're paying Van de Ven 50K a week, whatever it is. So I think we're actually making a bit of progress, hopefully with Vinay and a bit more professional staff. And I think one thing I've observed actually with Frank and his team and the dynamics already with Vinay and Levy is that I reckon you might see Tottenham trust Frank a bit more to go out and get done what he needs to back him in and be successful. I know there's no evidence of that yet in the window, but I do think the next week will be telling in getting the players out, get the cash flow rolling a little bit, and then we'll start to see a bit more activity, hopefully.
I completely agree with you, Mike. Right. Sorry to interrupt, but I completely agree with you, Mike. But I think that's the one thing that's a little bit worrying, is in that obviously we had Paratici. Yeah. Now we've got Johan Lange, and obviously Paratici is still an advisor, but it still feels like Daniel Levy is integral in all of our negotiations. And it's like, I thought he hired these people to move away from that and to allow them to do the footballing and make the footballing decisions. Yet we hear about, especially in January, wasn't it, with Matthias Tell, Daniel Levy going over there to try and convince him. It's like, why is it you? It should never be you. You're supposed to be here as the owner, and you've hired all these people, spent club's money to hire these people to get them in, but you're not letting them do their job. It's so frustrating, isn't it, when we see that, when we hear about Daniel Levy's involvement.
Yeah, Joe, what would you do if Daniel Levy rocked up to your house and tried to get you to come to Tottenham? You'd probably just shut the door in his face and run away. Yeah. It's a bizarre tactic how Levy goes in and he thinks he can be this rainmaker. He's a very unappealing bloke on many fronts. So hopefully he can keep his nose out of things for a bit and let's see some action happen.
It's never going to happen.
We can hope, eh?
I agree.
It will never happen. It's just never ever going to happen. I know we laugh about it and think it will never happen.
I did say hopefully.
It's ingrained in him. I don't think he can let go. I was always told once that you employ intelligent people for them to tell you how to do the job. You don't employ intelligent people for you to tell them how to do the job. Unfortunately, we've lost so many great people. You look at Liverpool, how they've completely changed their playing style, their recruitment. It's a Tottenham guy. He was at Tottenham. There's so many people that we've lost, and I don't think he'll ever let go, really. I think 99.9% of the reason why we haven't had any investment is because of that. I think the name and rights of the stadium, which was meant to be this big, huge thing we were going to get 200 million for, has never happened. I think that's partly because of it as well. And there's so many things that he does. But I hate sitting here as well on the other side talking bad, because look at what we do have in terms of a great stadium, a great training facility. We have, all the infrastructures there to be absolutely incredible. We just don't show that ambition on the football side as we do commercially, and that's where my biggest frustration comes from.
It feels like a bit of a glass ceiling, doesn't it? Where we've Levy has done very well in sections of Tottenham, and he's got us as high as he possibly can, really. Yeah. But he's kind of bashing against it, and it's like, if you don't loosen up, you're never going to be able to get through it. We need outside investment. And there was rumours about Qatari investment. I don't know if people heard about it, about how that kind of fell through because Levy kind of moved the goalposts and kind of said, no, I need this, I need this. Apparently Joe Lewis was ready to sell his part of his share of the money or of Tottenham. But Daniel Levy obviously owns, I think, around 30% of Tottenham. And he was haggling about all of it and wanted to stay involved. And it all fell apart from that. And again, it's all from Levy just not letting go when it feels like it's time.
It's control, which is, and look, we can praise and we can criticize, but he does need praise as well for the things he has done. I just think if he can replicate what he's done off the pitch on the pitch, we're an incredible football side. Incredible, but he doesn't let go.
You know what? It's like having Levy at the club in ownership. It reminds me of what it's like wearing a really heavy weighted vest to the gym. Like they're a club that's trying to do a lot, but they've just got this, menace behind the scenes weighing you down in everything you're trying to do. But I'm trying to stay positive. But as you blokes say, until the ownership changes in some material way via Levy and Lewis, which history shows it never will until something happens or it's no longer profitable. Problem is the business is too profitable. So why would you sell? Because it's going to a family trust. So, it's a wicked problem that they don't realise that their main business is football or should be. But, that's money talks, doesn't it?
I think if somebody takes over the trust, I know that he's Joe Lewis's daughter looks after the trust now. So hopefully I did hear quite a lot of things that she's not the biggest fan of Daniel Levy. So hopefully that might be why we've got some of the things that are happening this summer. He's not named on any of the recent press releases. He's not been on any of those, which is quite telling. That's new. But equally, I think every time we don't get a player, we're going to automatically blame Daniel Levy, and he might not even be a part of it. Who knows? But unfortunately, I think we've always had with Tottenham is the communication coming out of the club's always been so poor that we just speculate so much, and it's just frustrating, as you all said.
Totally. No, thank you very much. James, I'll come to you before we move on to other players, because we've spent a large time on Kudus, which is fine. Do you think that there will be a Tottenham tax from West Ham?
What, sorry, Harry?
A Tottenham tax. Do you think that they make it harder or increase the price for Tottenham? I think they'd rather Chelsea sign him, wouldn't they?
It already seems that way, doesn't it? I think it's probably too much money for that player. But in a way, that's the modern game now, isn't it? It's 50, 60 million is kind of what you're looking at for any attacking player, or, if they're English, you pay a premium. I agree with what everyone's just said as well about Levy. Joseph, you said about the Kudus deal's already dragged on a week. I honestly wouldn't be surprised if it dragged on till deadline day. I mean, it's the way the club operates is just a bit embarrassing, really, isn't it? They just need to get the deal done, as simple as that. And then in terms of other targets, it's a bit worrying that we're not really hearing much at the moment. And the ones that we do want, obviously, we can't afford or we're not getting for whatever reason, because they can get more, like we've already said, they can get more money elsewhere, or we don't want to pay, 80 million. It goes above that bracket. But using the word frustrating again, but January we were down to the bare bones, and we got Danso and Telwyn on right at the end. Like, why are we not getting players in at the beginning of the month? It's just bizarre. And then we're linked with Guy. Is it, you pronounce it Guy? Mark Guy at Palace. 75 mil again, like right at the end of the window. But those rumours have gone now. So was that a panic buy? Do they want him if Romero goes? Is Romero staying? Like, just need a bit more sort of clarity. And hopefully Frank can bring that. But like we've just said about Levy, I think he has too much of a say in, who we're buying. And Frank might have a bit of a rude awakening when it comes to that. Because if he's saying, like, I want this player, he's effectively going to have the same problem as what all our other managers have had, where Levy's gone, well, no, I won't give you that player, but I'll give you this player who's cheaper. Like, and it's, we'll see. But hopefully we can show a bit more conviction, but I just can't see it.
Hopefully. I mean, James, you mentioned there about Crystal Palace. I think a good example at the start of last season is Palace were really bad. If you remember, rock bottom going into the first international break because they didn't have the future of players like Tyrese Mitchell, Mark Gahey, Eberechi Eze. Confirms it was all up in the air, and it actually affected their start to the season. And we losing crazy games, and we lost 2-1 to Brentford. It was Mark Gahey own goal. His head was clearly already thinking he's going to Liverpool. It's just a complete mess. I think it's a good example of why you mustn't let big player transfers such as Romero or incomes as well, players like Kudus, whoever it may be, you don't want those sagas to be dragging on going into the season. I just don't think it's healthy. It'd be good to give Frank these players for pre-season to experiment with, find out where the gaps are, the holes. I just want us to get business done. But I'll tell you what, before we move on from Kudus, raise your hand if you think, because you've given our opinions, but raise your hand if you think that Tottenham will sign Mohamed Kudus. Kudus will be a Tottenham player. Raise your hand. So just Joseph at the moment out of 4. Okay, James as well. Joseph and James.
I'm surprised at that.
2-2.
So it's half and half.
I've always liked the Aussies.
Why do you like Mike and Gary? Why do you feel like we won't get him?
I don't think West Ham will sell him to us. As I said, all of my family are basically outside of me and my brother are West Ham fans. My wife is, all my in-laws, pretty much everybody.
Must be quite fun.
Yeah. I don't see him selling to Tottenham. The fans will go absolutely incredible. They will go. I agree with you.
Sorry to interrupt. I agree with you, Gary, to a certain degree, because I don't think we've signed anyone from West Ham. Was it since Parker? Scott Parker was the last.
Another reason why I'm desperate for it to happen, though. Or annoy all of them.
I just don't see them allowing it to happen. I think there will be a huge revolt against the ownership, and they're already pretty upset with the ownership as it is anyway. I don't
think he's going to go to Chelsea now, because Chelsea have made movements elsewhere now, haven't they? They've got Gittins.
Yeah, I don't know where it'll go, but I'm not convinced. That I'll probably say this, and we'll come off this, and we've signed him. And I look silly, but I'm prepared to. But I just, I don't.
We won't be coming off this at the end of August.
We might do. But I think I just don't see them selling to us for the money that would take for it to go through. I don't think Daniel Levy does. So I think it's dead in the water. I just don't see it happening.
Could I ask another question quickly to you, Mike? Because I know you said that, I think it was also you, Gary, you said about other options. Let's say if we weren't to get Kudus, and let's say Eze wasn't available either, is there another person to pivot to that you would prefer?
I'll let Gary go first, because I think out of the players that I would have liked to see that was spoken about, I think Semenyo is a superstar. I love him. Disappointed that he's re-signed, but I can't think of who else in the Premier League proven sort of fits that profile at the minute, and that's partly because we take so long to get deals done. On the Kudus deal, I reckon it'd be a bit like what Larry David says about compromise. both parties lose equally in a good compromise. And I think that would be exactly what would happen if we signed Kudus, because we'd pay the West Ham tax. So you'd be paying a lot more than what he's worth, because I reckon he's not better than Mbeumo. Mbeumo's superb and proven and far longer time. And I think you'd be paying overs because of the West Ham tax. And I think we'd be getting a player who has only done one great season, and we'd be paying a bit too much. And West Ham don't want to sell him because we're Tottenham and they have a fan revolt. So I think it would be a classic bad compromise if we get him. Although, look, it would be nice to have a new signing, but maybe someone else can say who's better that's out there, who's probably better priced.
I think for me, if there's if Eze's off the table, I think for me, I'm looking at other options within the squad. I appreciate we do need a winger. I also think that we desperately need a centre-back, desperately, in terms of the amount of games we're going to play, and a holding midfielder. I think that for me is a big priority, is the holding midfielder. If we were to look at a winger, I feel looking in somewhere like Italy is probably better. I like Lookman at Atalanta. I think he's absolutely outstanding. I think he's got some Premier League experience. He's really improved at Atalanta, and there's a number of other people within the Italian game that I think would be good to look at. And I think that certainly when we went and bought Kulusevski and Romero, did any of us really expect them both to be as good as they've been? Probably not. Maybe some did. So I would look for a bit more experience, maybe from outside. Premier League wise, I like Wissa from Brentford. I do like Semenyo, but again, I think Semenyo's going to cost too much. So it's a difficult one. For me, I think the priorities are elsewhere right now, because I don't see Romero staying.
Gary, can I ask you about Xavi Simons? What do you reckon?
Yeah, he's a great player. I mean, again, it comes down to costings, isn't it? I think that's the problem we have with everything. We can look at people that we like. I think he's a fantastic player. Again, is he a winger that's going to take people on as much as we want? Maybe. I think it really comes down to what Thomas Frank wants, and I could see Thomas Frank moving Brennan Johnson to the left over potentially a sign. I think if we definitely got in Bremer, for instance, Johnson would be on the left. He was trying to sign him for Brentford constantly up until we obviously got him. So he's a big fan of his. I think that he'll probably move sides. And I think that maybe Kulusevski, once back from injury, will be more on the right. Having them both out there, for me, I like Xavi Simons. Again, I need to know what Thomas Frank's going to play before I would be like, these are the people I want. For me, a centre midfielder, a holding centre midfielder, and a centre back are my biggest priorities. And then today, obviously, there's been links with Ndoggy potentially leaving. So then we need potentially a left back, but we also really need to look at the issues we've got with homegrown talent. We've only got one potentially that can play in the Champions League, so we'll lose 3 players in the Champions League.
Yeah, I think that's on the club trained, isn't it? Club trained.
Yeah,
issue.
so we need to really consider where we can improve that. And I'm not saying we go and buy Harry Winks or Oliver Skipback, but we need to be looking at those type of stuff as well. And there's a lot of things we need to do.
It certainly is. I think that's why the links to like Dennis Serkin and Carl Walker-Peters back to the club, because I think we could all agree that's not a direction we want to be going in, but I think it does meet those certain quotas that we have to meet. But moving on for now, away from Tottenham a little bit, but a player that we all kind of spoke about, so read the latest on him. On Mbeumo, Fabrizio Romano reports that Manchester United's absolute focus remains on Brian Mbeumo's that deal, and the talks will continue this week. No agreement with Brentford last week, but Man United keep working on it very hard. And Brian Mbeumo wants Manchester United, so the deal's on. That's what he said. So it looks like that will happen at some point, but might need a little bit of time. Kota Takai, the Japanese centre-back Kota Takai, was seen at the airport on his way to London yesterday ahead of an imminent and all but confirmed move to Tottenham. Joseph, do you know anything about Kota Takai, and do you reckon he'll be loaned out when he comes in?
It's definitely one I think we're going to have to wait and see in terms of how he does in pre-season. I think Thomas Frank will obviously have a real look at him, as he should. The same with a lot of players that are kind of coming back from loan and things like that, seeing if they could be utilised next season. From what I obviously hadn't heard much about him when we first signed him, but from what I'm hearing, he's a terrific Japanese international player. He was one of the better players in the J League last year at such a young age, and defensively he's been really good. Obviously, a record fee to the Japanese J League, which is a big deal. So I think it's going to be the same kind of player as where we signed Bergvall. I think that's how they're looking at it. Kind of come in. Same as Pape Sarr and Udogie, where we got them in early before somebody else could have kind of taken them off our hands. This is where I actually kind of go away or disagree with Gary. I know you said about how you feel like we desperately need a centre back. I don't think we need it desperately if we keep Romero, if we keep Van de Ven. I think there's other areas of the pitch that need to be addressed more, because you've also got the likes of Danzo, you've got Dragoshin when he comes back from injury. I know a lot of people might not love Dragoshin. I always thought the system under Ange really didn't complement his abilities. I could have seen him doing well in any other Premier League team if he was playing as a defender, and I think with Thomas Frank maybe he'll revitalise him a little bit. But you've got Dragoshin coming back from injury. It looks like he's kind of back in training, so he'll be available. And then you've got the likes of like Ashley Phillips coming back from loan. You've got Vuskovic coming in for the first time into Tottenham. You've also obviously got Kota Takai coming in now. Ben Davis is still debatably left back / centre back. So you've kind of got options there. I think it's one position we don't desperately need reinforcement. Obviously, if Romero was to leave, then that changes everything. I think it becomes the most important position. But and where we're at right now, I think we're in a good position with that. And especially again, if these players stay, if Kota Takai is to come in and actually be a part of the squad, I think you don't want to have too many names there because none of them are going to get an opportunity.
I think most of them probably won't anyway. We're not really a team that's known for developing younger players consistently. My biggest concern with Romero is not that the fact that it probably will go at some point, is that he doesn't seem to keep fit long enough. He misses a hell of a lot of games. He is an unbelievable footballer, but for me, consistency is key. I think on his days, a 10 out of 10. That cup final, he was immense, unbelievable. However, we've probably had that 2 or 3 times, maybe 4 maximum. I'd rather take a consistent 8 out of 10 every single week than a bit now and again. And I'm not trying to in any way say I want him to leave. I don't, but I want to see a bit more of a consistency from him. I think he gets bored. I know that sounds silly. I think he just gets bored and just wants to go smash somebody, and he just loses himself. And we're going to be playing potentially up to 60 plus games next season, and he doesn't keep fit enough. I like Danzo. I think Danzo's a very, very good player. He looked great when he's been playing. I do like him. Draghi was great at Genoa a couple of seasons ago. I think I agree with you that probably the system didn't fit him. Was he really what Ange wanted? Who knows? But my biggest concern is the level of games, the amount of games we're going to have, and the inconsistency and injuries that Romero has. Plus, there's a World Cup next year, and he ain't going to want to miss that.
Yeah, no, I get what you mean, definitely. And I think we should maybe look at a centre-back. I mean, again, ideally, we get reinforcements all over the pitch because we do desperately need it. I mean, what last season showed us with the injury crisis we had, it showed us that we desperately need reinforcements, especially inexperience as well. We need players who know Champions League football, who know top European football, at least across the top 5 leagues, really, to come in rather than expecting youngsters to be ready, which is kind of what we had to rely on last year, especially with the likes of Archie Gray. It felt like he wasn't necessarily ready for the massive step up that he had to take, but he obviously tried to do the best he could. But it would have been a lot easier if we had another an older head to come in and just settle everything down, but we never had that. So I do get what you mean, definitely. But I just think, a midfielder is, for me, number 6 is a desperate need. It's what we desperately need. And we need a backup left back or right back because we kind of had Pedro, Porro, Udogie, and Spence last year.
Yeah.
They were the only real fullbacks that we were relying on every week, and you need to have somebody else there. So we'll see what we do.
No, thank you both of you for that one. It's a nice little discussion. Next player I want to move on to is Son, because Jan June Football from Asian.com, who's an expert in transfer market and football writer and TV commentator. The credibility of the source is unknown, but anyway, he reported earlier this week that Son Heung-min has decided to stay at Tottenham. He said that Son will next week, which is now this week, meet Thomas Frank to finalise plans. Son's goal is to have one last shot at Champions League glory, despite talks with LAFC. James, I'm going to kick it off with you. Should we cash in on Son while we can get something for him, or does he deserve one more chance?
I mean, money's always appealing, but it's not my money. So, I'd like Sonny to stay. He's a club legend. Got a soft spot for him, to be honest. Like, who does one of the nicest players in football, not just at Tottenham, but on a global scale. Just the nicest man you could possibly ever. I mean, I've never met him personally, but just seems like a stand-up guy. Come under a little bit of criticism for being a captain. He's not hard enough and all the rest of it, but he's still experienced and he's still a leader in his own way. You get leaders in different molds. Very good friends with Ben Davies. He made him godfather to his child. So that just says everything, doesn't it? He deserves another season. I understand the fairy tale of, leaving on a high of, winning a European trophy and all that, and that's great. But I'm selfish, and I'd like him to stay as long as possible. He's the last player from that starting 11 of that Champions League final. So it'd be nice for him to have one more season, and he can play in the Champions League, and that also speaks volumes of his character. He's not going to cash in and go and play in the MLS or Saudi Arabia. He wants to play at the highest level still and play in the Champions League. So he's earned that.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Mike. One last dance for Son, or do we cash in?
Absolutely. Get him on the dance floor. He's a Tottenham legend. Another season with Sonny would be special. It would be a very nice time for him to go, though, because he has just won a European trophy after winning absolutely nothing for a very long time. So he does deserve to go off to LA Galaxy and hang out with his mate Lloris, and I'm sure that'd be lovely. But knowing his loyalty and what he's contributed to the club, he's a great. I know there's been criticisms of him because of his maybe not vocal enough on the pitch, but I think he's an outstanding captain. I think he's an outstanding Tottenham person, and his loyalty and character is what this club really needs right now. So I can see the upside of maybe selling him and cashing in, and maybe it's nice for all parties, but he's got a taste of success at a club that never has success. So I don't know, if it was me, I might want to hang around for another season, and I hope he feels the same.
That's a great word as well, Mike, loyalty, because, it's quite rare in football now. So, to show that's a good characteristic of a captain. Absolutely.
Yeah. 100%.
I mean, of course, you couldn't begrudge him for leaving if he got a good deal because of what he's done. But, I think he's always been a selfless representative for Tottenham. And I think we just need someone like that at the club who's got real character. Like, it's just going back to what Gary and Joe were saying before. Like, it's like Romero is like the Rolls Royce that just comes out on the big occasions, and he's never injured for Argentina. He's never injured in a final. Like, he lives for the moment, right? Sonny's almost for me like the exact opposite. He's just like a through and through great bloke who's always there, always reliable, not really injured very often. And he was a bit off last season, but his output was still very good. And he's like 34 now. So, what do you expect? He's going to drop off a bit, but he's still brings so much, I think, to the dressing room and to the supporters and the fans. I know that for me, I'd be looking far less forward to the season coming up without him,
No, that's interesting. Thank you. Gary, for you, do you think it feels right to end on a high after just winning the Europa League? Or do you think that we give him another season and maybe use him as something like an impact substitution?
I think he chooses. I think whatever he chooses is the right thing. For me, he stays. But if he decides it's time to go, I don't think anyone's going to be unhappy. We'll be unhappy to see him go, but no one's going to be up in arms about, oh my God, he's leaving us. I think that's a fairy tale ending for him. But equally having one last shot of the Champions League, because who knows what might happen. You never know. It might be Football Manager, but it won't happen. But who knows? For me, he gets to choose, and I'd be delighted if he stays, and I'd be thankful for all that he's done if he left.
Yeah, that's a really nice way of putting it, actually. It's really interesting. Joseph, we're going to ask a question to you, and it will be a little bit, I suppose, controversial. And, you know, it's one that I've certainly heard mentioned a few times, in particular recently, with Son's future up in the air. Do you think it'd be sadder when Heung-min Son leaves than it was when Harry Kane left?
Yeah, I think so, yeah. I think Son's kind of consolidated himself as especially the most kind of modern legend for Tottenham. Obviously, Kane, probably the best player that Tottenham have had in a very long, well, possibly ever, but definitely in the last, 20, 30 years.
Yeah.
With Harry Kane, it's obviously, yeah, again, he left early. He left, and not to say that he made the wrong choice. I think at the time it made a lot of sense for him to leave because Tottenham weren't looking like they were going to go win a trophy. But obviously Son stayed and stuck it out and finally won that trophy with Tottenham. And again, for all of us, I think he's our kind of Spurs legend. He's someone that we all idolise, and we're so thankful for him because he felt almost like a true Tottenham fan. I think he kind of embodied how all of us felt. The relief of finally winning that trophy was so amazing. And I completely agree with Gary in the sense that I think it should be his choice if he was to stay or to leave. I think if you're being cynical, if you're putting on a business or Daniel Levy hat, I think you probably look at it and go, let's try and make some money, a final little kind of, maybe 30 to 40 million, maybe possibly for Son from Saudi Arabia or the MLS or something. Because obviously, again, he has been kind of declining steadily, and he's not always been the first name. And I don't think next season he'll be the first name on the team sheet if he does stay. I could see him coming off the bench a lot because I think there's a lot of players in the squad that could maybe provide more from the start, and maybe Son becomes a bit more of an impact player off the bench. But again, if he was to stay, emotionally, if you're looking at it from emotional side, I think a lot of Tottenham fans want him to stay just because it would be such a shame to see that kind of character leave. I mean, it seems like every player around him loves him. Again, the club loves him, the fans love him. So whatever happens, again, it's completely up to him, I feel. I think that's what Tottenham should be doing because he's given us, debatably, the best moment we've all experienced in 17 years or, again, for me, pretty much my lifetime, really, as a Tottenham fan. It's the first true moment I've really felt this glory. And a big part of that's from Heung-min Son being the captain of Tottenham. So we owe it all to him. And I think, whatever he was to decide should happen.
Yeah, that's very fair. I think that makes sense. Tell you, Joseph, stay with you. One last question. Do you think Son will remain captain if he does stay? Would that be the right thing?
Yeah, 100%. Obviously, I know, I think it was James who said about the way he is the captain. It's a bit, obviously different captains are a bit different. And I think I have always looked at Son and gone, again, he's not the most vocal on the pitch. And sometimes you want a captain to be a bit more kind of like getting the players and ordering them around. But the one thing you do see from Son is everybody respects him and everyone loves him and everyone really does care about what he's got to say and what he's doing for the club. So again, I'm very happy with Son being the captain. Again, he knows Tottenham and he knows what we've all been through as well. He's kind of experienced it. And I'd rather have that kind of captain who knows the bad and knows the good. And he can show the players that this is what it's like being a Tottenham Hotspur player. This is how you've got to behave. This is how you've got to be. And I think he's the right captain for Tottenham Hotspur right now.
Okay. That's interesting to hear. Thank you very much. We have briefly already discussed him. We'll move on, though, to Christian Romero. Mike, I'm going to kick it off with you. Firstly, do you think that Romero will stay or leave? We'll get onto your opinion in a bit, but what do you think will happen?
Yeah, I haven't checked in on the latest status. I know Atleti and a few other clubs are pretty hot on Romero. I think it's going to be about the price. I mean, they can just hold him to his contract and hold out for that over £60 million valuation that I think they've got on him. Oh, look, the guy wins everything. Usually not with us, but he is a serial winner, and I think he should be valued above that £60 million mark. So I'd be very comfortable selling him if we got over that amount, but not if it's anything under. And obviously prefer him not to be in the Premier League, so we don't have to see him every week. But look, he's the kind of player that championship, really high-paying clubs would dream about, because they've got backups and they can afford for him to be injured every now and then. The problem with Romero for us is that, as Gary, Joe, and James have alluded to, there's just if you have Van der Ven and Romero, both are serial injured. They're always injured. So if that's your starting and it's like $120 million pairing of centre backs, you can't have both of them being so injury prone all the time and just rocking up for the big games, one of them. So that's why I think I'd almost prefer to sell Romero, strengthen other parts of the squad, and have Danso in there, who's a bit of a Mr. Reliable. And I like his attitude better, to be honest.
Good shout. James, if Romero deep down is like definite that he wants to go, should we cash in on him? Because it's no good, is there, keeping a player that doesn't want to be here? You know, we've seen several examples that players are their minds elsewhere, they want to play elsewhere. It's not really going to work. As much as I think all of us on the panel would probably want to keep Romero, I think I can comfortably say that he doesn't want to be here. Do you cash in?
Yeah, 100%. You know, if a player's heart's not 100% in it, then you should definitely cash in, so to speak. It's a bit of a funny one, isn't it? I think the injury problems is the main concern. As far as Romero goes, he's you know, typical hothead South American. That seems to have improved a bit, doesn't it, since he's been given the responsibility of, you know, being a captain or a vice captain. But
true.
I'm still not confident that he's, you know, not going to make a rash tackle or get sent off or. I mean, these Atletico Madrid rumours aren't going away, are they? So I wouldn't be surprised if he goes in this window. I still think the money should be a bit more. Like if they're saying sort of 50 million or whatever, the guy's, you know, like you say, he's a serial winner. He's won the World Cup. He's won the Copa America. He's won the Europa League now. He has experience. He's a leader. I think, you know, we should be pushing for more money for him personally, if he is going to go. But it'd be nice if he stayed and committed and said, look, you know, I've won the Europa League. I'm one of the leaders. I'm here to stay. But yeah, there seems to be that little niggle that didn't he not hang around for the victory lap of that last home game as well? There was rumours he went or something, so he wasn't there or whatever. I don't know whether he was still drinking wine on the bus or whatever. But yeah, so I don't know. If he goes, then, you know, like Gary said, we 100% need another centre back. I think Danso's good, but I'm not sure if he's top draw in terms of Romero's mould, and Van der Ven is different class, isn't he? But yeah. If Romero goes, I think Guy from Palace is for me a good replacement. English as well. But yeah, again, Romero, what is he, 27? If he can keep those injuries away and he's committed to Tottenham, I want him to stay. But if he deep down he wants to go, then fair enough. It's just disappointing it's Atletico Madrid. If it was Real, then you can kind of understand, can't you? But you know, Atletico Madrid, come on, stay at Tottenham.
Yeah, definitely agree. The latest, Alistair Gold has reported that Tottenham have not received a new or recent bid at all for Cuti Romero. He's expected back at pre-season training at Hotspur Way later this week. Thomas Frank is understood to be excited about working with Romero and wants him in his backline this season. Gary, does that give you positivity that he could stay at the club, and how do you view the whole situation?
Like everybody else, I don't want him to go, but there needs to be more consistency. Equally, if there's a 70 plus million offer on the table, I'd probably be more inclined to take that and use that for a Mark Gahey, someone like that. Last season, he played 18 games in the Premier League. Just injuries, red cards. Like I said earlier, I just think that perhaps sometimes he gets a bit bored. I don't know, but I get worried about him. On a consistent basis. Maybe Thomas Frank could get something out of him that I didn't see last year. Equally, if he goes to Atletico Madrid, they've not won the league they've won the league once in the time that Simeone's been there, and Simeone's been there nearly 15 years. So he's probably going to want to work with him because they're Argentinian. It's a nicer place to live, Madrid, than London or Enfield or wherever he may be. But he's not going to win anything more, I wouldn't have expect. But like I say, if there's a big offer on the table, I'm taking it personally, and I'm using that for someone that's consistent, that can give me an 8 or 9 every week.
Yeah, I agree with
Fair
you, Gary. I think the consistency is the main problem, isn't it?
Yeah.
If he was more consistent and spent less time in the treatment room, then it's another story. I've just seen those comments there from Spurs related as well. Yeah, I forgot about the Simeone factor. You know, the Argentinian. They're both dirty, aren't they? They both love to roll around.
And he's going to want to, play with under him. You know, Simeone is obviously a legend, and he's been there a long, long time. So there's a consistency in the way that manager's probably always going to be there until he doesn't want to be there. They're consistent in the way they play. They're consistent in their transfers, whereas Tottenham aren't. And there's constant chop changing. You know, he's been with us 4 years now. Four seasons. He's played 100 games for us in those 4 seasons. That consistency for me is my biggest worry. If we could get that 8 or 9 out of him every week, keep him all day long. But yeah, just not sure.
I mean, at least we got Van de Ven. I mean, if we didn't have him, then I'd be worried. But
I think Van de Ven and Danzo look decent together in the couple of games they played. I agree with you. I don't think Danzo's a replacement by any stretch of the imagination.
No,
I think
for squad player, and he looks
absolutely
solid.
He's a great squad player. He seems like he really likes being there. I think if we could get another one like that, but an equally a real good, top quality, consistent centre back to replace Romero, great. But if Romero stays, I'm absolutely delighted. And I think if he stays, he's probably likely to be one of them. Probably would be the captain if Song doesn't play every week.
Yeah, definitely.
Probably go with Romero.
No, I agree with you. I think that it's on the club, though. I think it's their fault, in particular Daniel Levy and the board, if Romero does leave. And I think Romero's, for me, in my eyes, world class anyway. Totally agree with everything you've said, both of you. But I think we should be doing everything in our power to keep him. But at the same time, as I said, player doesn't want to be here, then you have got to cash in. I think Danso does look good, but if we can keep hold of Romero, that would show real ambition. But we're in a situation now where he's contemplating his Tottenham future, because I think the board have ultimately failed. You know, they failed to back someone who's a proven winner. Okay, that's fine. They decided to get rid of him. Overall, they haven't done enough to convince Romero. I didn't think they've done enough to convince Kane. I think they let him down, and Son as well, considering his future, probably disappointed in what he's seen on and off the pitch. So I think it all comes back to one thing.
Sorry, Harry. He's been quite vocal, hasn't he, as well, Romero, on socials and stuff in the past.
He has, hasn't he? Yeah.
Towards the board. So there's obviously a bit of, tension there with regards to that. So if he does go, I really wouldn't be surprised.
James, I reckon he's trying to force himself out with all that kind of behaviour.
Yeah, true.
It's classic recalcitrant employee kind of behaviour, sort of fire shots at the management and board when you're not happy, carry on socials, don't show up with the best attitude. He wants to be sold, so sell him. But I just saw on the Twitter that Elanga just got done to Newcastle for 55.
55.
Was that done deal, was it?
Yeah, it's done deal, and they did it fast. They did it well. They did it in the way that we don't do anything. Elanga would have been one that I forgot to say. Also nice profile. Also sort of similar to the players that we're looking at in Kudus. Yeah. So
I do think if Elanga was 55 million, though, Kudus is probably worth the same.
Yeah, I agree.
Agreed. Yeah, I think you look at Morgan Gibbs-White as well in there as well.
He's a special player, Morgan Gibbs-White.
Yeah. I think Morgan Gibbs-White is probably another one I'd look at, depending on price. But Forest need to keep all the players if they're not going to want to sell everybody.
Yeah. Well, that's one thing that's actually similar with this whole Romero situation is, I think Forest bought him for about 40 million from Wolves, Morgan Gibbs-White. So let's be honest, they're not going to sell him for any cheaper. And I've seen, obviously, Atletico Madrid wanting to get Romero, and they've, rumoured around 50-ish million. And it's like, that's pretty much what we bought him for. Like, if we're going to sell him, we're going to want to make a profit on him. So it's got to be upwards of 60, 65 million. I know you hadn't come to me yet on that, Harry, but for me, like with Romero, I completely understand what everyone's saying. And I do partly agree with it in the sense of, if he doesn't want to be there, then I think you've got to look at letting him go. But the thing that worries me is about replacing him. I don't, with Argentina, and there's a lot of players that literally look at Romero and think he's the best centre-back in the world. And I think on his day, he can actually show that he can be that player. To let him go, who do you look at getting? And do you trust a club to, within the next couple of couple of months, be able to go and find the right player to replace him. I don't know if I completely do. There's not an abundance of world-class centre-backs out there that are all available, other than maybe you could look at Mark Guehi, but I know obviously Liverpool are looking at him as well. So there's not loads and loads of options out there, especially ones that would want to come to Tottenham.
There's
See, I like Mark Guehi.
Scalvini
Not
from
feel-
Atalanta for me would be the guy. Scalvini, he was linked with us a couple of seasons ago with
He's being linked with Newcastle now as well.
He would be someone I'd be very interested in, I think, because also there's that Italian connection anyway, but he's played in the Champions League. He's still very young, but he's accomplished. He could play centre-backs, holding midfielder as well, could play right back as well, I believe. So he would be someone I'd look at. And obviously he's at Atalanta where we got Romero from, so we could probably go back there. But I agree with you. My biggest concern was a bit like the Bale money. We didn't spend it very well.
The right way, yeah.
We didn't spend it the right way. And again, we're going to be like we've all said, we'll get to the last week, we haven't bought a centre back and we're just going to throw 50 million at somebody just to get someone in and not going to be the right person.
What were you going to say before, Harry?
That's all right. I was just going to kind of say to you, Joseph, if you felt that Mark Guehi was as good as he is that sideways from Romero? Do you see it as someone who's better than Romero, not as good? I want to know how you view it if you had to compare them. I know it's not a good way to look at it, but if you have to make the comparison.
I get you. I think Mark Guehi is the best English centre-back. I actually think he's the most steady and probably will be England's future ready starting centre-back. Obviously, the age as well. He's a bit younger than Romero. I do think Romero is better. I think he's more established. He's ready for those European nights, whereas Guehi might not be ready for them, although he did look very comfortable when he played with England previously. So it is a tough one. But again, it's going to be a massive fee, one that actually might be more money than what we actually sell Romero for. And yeah, it's not easy. It's a tough one. So I hope that Romero stays. If he was to leave, then again, it will be one that's difficult to replace, I think, and it's one that will need a lot of attention on it. And let's hope that Tottenham are prepared for that eventuality, because even if he doesn't leave this year, he will probably be leaving next year, because I think he's got 2 years left on his deal. If he comes to next year, you've got a year left. You need to sell him in that summer window.
Yeah.
Before we move on to Richarlison, Gary, if you were Daniel Levy, I know that's hard to picture, and I'll apologise for making you Daniel Levy for this. I know, again, what would you do in his shoes? You said that you'd probably cash in. Do you kind of stand by that from his point of view? Would you want some of that profile still at the club, or is it just bring in the money, cash in hand?
I think that he is trying to force out. I think some of the stuff that he said is kind of edging to that way, and I don't think that Daniel Levy would like that, for one. Equally, I think he will play hardball because that's who he is, and he will wait till there's 1 year left and then maybe sacrifice a few million. We've seen it before that he's done. So I think unless we get a big offer this summer, I don't see him leaving. However, I think he would leave next summer because there'll be a 1 year left, and then I that's how I think Daniel will do his business. Equally, like you guys said, who is there out there that we can replace? Obviously, I mentioned Scalvini. I like Tomori at Milan. Milan aren't in Europe at all this next season either, so potentially he's English as well. But again, it's difficult to see where we might be able to spend that money.
100%. Just want to really use your comment, and I appreciate regular here, David Clark, but I'm afraid, David, you clearly haven't listened to much of the podcast, because he says Mark Guehi is coming, knowing his Spurs, you lads are dreaming. Sooner or later, you need to wake up. Romero's going nowhere unless someone coughs up 70 million. No one on the podcast tonight has said that Mark Guehi is coming to Tottenham. We've just suggested him as an idea. And you commented earlier about Daniel Levy. You guys still defending Levy. Well, I think it's been an absolute battering of Daniel Levy, and probably rightly so. But also, there's been some that have acknowledged, rightly so again, the goods that he has done off the pitch in terms of with the business side. So it's been very, very balanced. So I'm afraid, David, you've clearly got the wrong end of the stick. So please do go back once this is finished and listen to the rest. But we'll move on now to Richarlison. James, I tell you what, kick it off with you. What should we do with Richarlison? Should we keep him? Should we sell him? Or even a loan? I mean, I can see the club doing that in terms of it could be an easy option, a loan with an obligation. What do you reckon? You're on mute, James.
Sorry, I think that's because I coughed. I mean, I think he's had enough time to prove himself, and I don't think he's quite done enough, to be honest with you. He hasn't got enough goals. Again, he's another player who's had quite a few injuries, hasn't he? Sort of in the team, out the team. Nice little touch last season when Maddison gave him, ended up giving him the ball for that penalty, but yeah, just doesn't do enough for me personally. And you can't keep everyone. I think we should just cash in. There's been rumours of him going to Saudi. If you can get like sort of, money like 40, 50 million for a player like Richarlison, we should be taking that all day long. Rumours he might go back to Everton. Apparently that's not likely. But yeah, like I said, we've talked about a lot of players coming in, but there's still all the players we've still got, like in the midfield. Maddison coming back from injury, Bentancur, Gray, do we give him a chance in midfield now? Bergval's been a revelation, so he's got to start. You still got to play all these players. Sarr. So yeah, I mean, if we're going to move players on, I think Richarlison's got to be one of them. Personally.
Okay, Gary, how do you feel about Richarlison? Do you agree with James?
Yeah, 100%. I think to move him on, unfortunately. I think there was a lot of excitement about him when he came. Fortunately, go back to the similar points to the others, consistency. There hasn't been any consistency at all. I don't think we've ever seen anywhere near what he's capable of doing. And if we could get 30, 40 million for him, I'd cash in straight away and use that money wisely. But that's Tottenham, not you. We don't tend to use money wisely.
No, that is very true. Joseph, if we do opt to sell him, how much do we realistically hold out for? What's a good amount to try and achieve to get anywhere or get anywhere near? And what do you think we will get in the end for Richarlison? Because it won't be as much as we paid for him, that's for sure.
No, I mean, the 60 million fee, I think even when we made it was a questionable one. I think a lot of Tottenham fans weren't 100% convinced it was the right move. It's a difficult one to gauge because you could say he's, when he is readily fit, he can be Brazil's number 9. But then also you've seen what he's done for Tottenham and he's been very poor in moments. Obviously, again, it was nice to see him towards the end of the season kind of have a little run of games where he was playing. And you could see what he does bring in terms of energy and effort. But again, the actual ability sometimes isn't always there. So I think, again, I agree with the lads. I think we do need to look at selling him. And it's tough, again, to gauge on the amount of money you could get. I think realistically, Tottenham might be able to get about 20 to 25 million for Richarlison. I don't think you're going to be really getting too much more than that. Maybe you get lucky and a Saudi Arabian club are willing to pay a bit more over the odds, but you're not guaranteed on that. So, yeah, I think it's definitely one that we need to look at selling. He hasn't really hit the ground running at Tottenham, never really kind of got on his feet. And again, the injuries have really hampered him. I think that's one thing we can all see. It seems like whenever he got fit, he got injured again. I remember, I think it was last year. I think it was at a Europa League game where he was running down the line. He was really busting to get there and get the ball across. And as soon as he did, we scored, but he pulled his hamstring. And you saw him in the celebrations kind of hobbling and you knew he'd done it. And it's been his career at Tottenham, always struggling with injuries. So as much as I appreciate him, I actually quite like him as a person. He's one where I think if you're a rival fan, you really hate him. But when he plays for your club, you learn to love him. A bit like what Diego Costa was for Chelsea. Mm-hmm. But again, that's not enough to keep you at Tottenham. You need to be performing. So yeah, 20 million, 25 million. I think you bite your hand off and you look at reinvesting that somewhere else. I mean, I've made a video on the Scarfey Spurs Talk page. Please do go have a look at that video about the transfer window. And I suggested a player, Evan Gesand from Nice, to kind of come in and be a replacement for Richarlison, kind of play on multiple wings as well as through the middle. And he's had a great season for Nice. So, yeah, there's definitely other options out there that can do more than what Richarlison's done.
I think the great thing is during the cup final, I said to some people, if you'd have told us 10 years ago we're going to have Brazil's number 9, a Brazilian number 9 play for us, we'd think we'd be winning the Champions League. And unfortunately, it's Richarlison who's the number 9 Brazil centre. Brazil don't have to.
Like the Brazil with
not the Brazil anymore, and we would have all I'd have bit someone's hand off if they said you're going to have Brazil's number 9. Just echo all what you said and the comments that have come up. Just unfortunately, he's not what we need.
The one thing I would like to say, I know this is a bit separate, but just about Richarlison, obviously, I remember he had this article a lot about his mental health, and I know it's he kind of came out and showed how much he's been, he was struggling, but obviously he kind of came back off of that, and he's really put an effort, and he was a big reason why we won the Europa League. I know a lot of people might look at it and go, "Oh, he didn't do much, didn't score, didn't assist," but if you see how hard he worked for those 60 minutes, 65 minutes he was on the pitch, you show how desperate he was and how much he loves Tottenham, and that's something I'll always be grateful for him, Richarlison. And especially on the mental health side, again, it's so difficult when you're struggling, even for these professional footballers having it as good as they do. It's so great to see him bounce back, and to win that trophy is so great for him.
Yeah, I agree with you there, Joe. Like, I forgot about the mental health side, to be honest. And coming from someone who's also struggled down the years, just wanted him to succeed so much, but it just hasn't really worked, has it? He's a bit petulant on the pitch at times, and I think
we've all wanted him to succeed. Everybody has. We've all wanted him to succeed. I think it's clear that everybody does. It comes to me from consistency. I could see in that cup final. I thought it was great. I agree with you, Joe. I thought it was brilliant. If we got that every week, keep him. But it's just that consistency of keeping fit.
We've got Solanke as well, haven't we? So you can't really.
No.
Again, how many players do you keep? Like, some of them have got to be moved on, haven't they? Unfortunately.
I love Richarlison, but I totally agree with you. I just don't think he's done enough in a Spurs shirt. Tell you what, let's rate Richarlison's time at the club then, out of 10. Let's do this. So 10 being, oh my goodness, incredible, which I don't think we'll reach. 0 could be the lowest on this, god awful. Josie, we'll kick it off with you. I'm interested to see this.
I'd give him 4 out of 10. I think if you really look at it, again, the money we paid for him, if you look at that now, it's a really poor transfer. I mean, 60-ish million, I think we spent for him. It is really poor in what we got back. Again, there was moments where you saw his ability. I mean, you saw it in a Brazil shirt, didn't we? When he scored that overhead kick with it in the World Cup, that was just like, where has that been for Tottenham? And there's also, I remember that game against Everton a couple of years ago where he scored 2 wonderful goals, and you're just thinking, why aren't you doing this more consistently? He did it, but again, the injuries, big issue. So I'd give it a 4, I think. And again, I don't think we're going to make much of our money back either. So it's going to come down as a bit of a failed transfer. But again, you could say that overall he was successful at Tottenham. He won a Europa League trophy. So,
that's true.
Happy about that.
That is very true. How much money have we wasted? Goodness me. Sometimes when the money's been spent, the recruitment's been dire, god awful. James, what do you reckon? Richarlison out of 10, his time at the club.
Joe's made some good points there. I hate to be harsh, and I was going to go 5, but 4 was probably more realistic. But then he did win a Europa. He was in the starting 11 that won a Europa League. But then you try and think of moments, that players have given you, memories as fans. And other than that double he got in the Champions League, was it against Marseille? I think we won 2-0. Obviously not a very good memory because it's a bit vague for me. But other than that, he just hasn't done enough, has he, in a Spurs shirt? So I'll probably agree with Joe and go with the 4 purely because of the £60 million we spent as well. It's a lot of money. People go on about replacements. I don't think he was ever a replacement for Kane. Kane was a generational player. We got lucky with a young English lad who came through the academy against all odds and became our record goal scorer. You're not going to replace that, are you? It's impossible, but all highly improbable. But I'll agree with Joe. I'll go 4.5. Actually, I'll go 4.5.
That's a really good part that that you make though, James, in terms of that comparison to Kane. We're seeing it now with Solanke. It's not fair, is it? You're not going to replace Harry Kane. That's not what we've tried to do. We're just trying to sign a striker that's right for the manager and that can thrive in this team. So that's really important, and we forget that, all of us, I think, as fans sometimes. So that is a very, very good point. Gary, would you give Richarlison out of 10?
I didn't want to be harsh, so I was going to do a 5, but I think 4 is probably. I didn't want to be too critical because the effort's clearly there. I just think he's been incredibly unlucky. But a £60 million player can't really play 15 games last year, and I don't want to be too critical, but probably a 4 is being little bit kind.
It's all right. David will do it for you. He's always a bit critical.
Yeah,
Yes.
David Clark's YouTube chat has gone a 2 out of 10 for sweat and a 0 out of 10 for ability. That's a common David Clark.
What's
Answer.
it?
We've got
No,
some top
yes,
10 in the chat.
I think
as
his
well.
heading ability was probably his best asset.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, we talked
Certainly
about
worked
that.
hard.
Yeah, when you say a player works hard, you've always got to question how good his technical ability was.
Yeah.
Leonardo
It's
from
true.
the 90s.
It's a shame because he definitely showed glimpses of it over his career at Spurs.
Yeah,
and again,
100%, like-
during playing for Brazil.
Did you
but
mention the goal he scored for Brazil? Was it a scissor
yeah,
kick?
I mean, he scored that overhead kick, I think it was, and everyone was just kind of like, "Where the hell's that come from?"
Yeah, in the
It's
World Cup.
Charleston.
Yeah.
And again, I remember a game, a couple years ago against Everton. He scored 2 really great goals, and it was just kind of like, if you did this consistently, you'd be one of the best players in the Premier League. But it's just so inconsistent. As one day you really perform, the next you do nothing. So yeah,
And we're praising hard work, which doesn't make
it
much
should be
sense.
the minimum. But unfortunately,
should
then
be.
again, modern day football, it's not always
Yeah.
the minimum, is it?
It shouldn't be something that we praise, but unfortunately, I think we're trying to be kind.
The next player I want to move on to is Jacob Ramsey. So again, another couple of bit of news, and we get into, like we've kind of done with most of these players. Football Insider said that Tottenham are working on a deal to sign Jacob Ramsey in addition to Mohamed Kudus. Spurs' recruitment team, oh God, who are they, have been long-term admirers, and Thomas Frank is believed to be a big fan too. How many times have we had this? The club have already held talks with his agent over a transfer. John Tonley, who's a Villa correspondent from Birmingham Live, said Aston Villa had the option to sell Jacob Ramsey last summer, but Unai Emery firmly opposed it. Joseph, kick it off with you. Should Jacob Ramsey be a player on our radar? He almost feels like a kind of nice fit, doesn't he? I mean, we all like Eze, etc., but it's where does he fit in this team? I think he would fit in, don't get me wrong. Ramsey feels like a natural fit for a kind of like a central midfield number 8 role.
It's a tough one, really. I've never... It feels difficult because I feel like I naturally compare him to Morgan Rogers, and Morgan Rogers is unbelievable. Whereas Jacob Ramsey, I mean, obviously he's had injury issues. Jacob Ramsey, it's a really tough one. I'm not inspired by the idea of signing him. Again, maybe if Frank wants him and believes he can get a tune out of him, and kind of, I mean, you see Frank, he's done it with so many players where they've kind of grown and been unbelievable for them, like Mikael Damsgaard and Kevin Shadden and Burmo, and even Ivan Toney and Watkins. All these players have kind of grown and they've become excellent footballers. So if he thinks that Jacob Ramsey could be that type of player, then maybe it's one that we could look at doing. I think it's one where it's almost an opportunistic one again as well with Tottenham, because I think Aston Villa are in a bit of PSR issues and they need to look at selling somebody. So maybe that's why Tottenham are interested. I mean, no one's really heard about anyone going for Jacob Ramsey until now. And it feels like, again, it's an opportunity for Tottenham to get somebody maybe on a bit of a cheaper fee, because Villa are forced to sell someone. And obviously, I think he is club trained at Villa. I might be wrong. But I think,
right.
they'd get the maximum amount of profit from him. But yeah, again, I think you naturally, when you think about him, you think about Morgan Rogers and you think about how excellent Morgan Rogers is, and you think about, would you rather have him or would you have Jacob Ramsey? And you'd 100% pick Morgan Rogers. So I don't know, not completely inspired by the idea, but again, I get behind it if Tottenham were to do it.
Okay, thank you very much. James, I'm going to ask you about a different player, and this player comes up every single transfer window, so I apologise for mentioning it, and that is Conor Gallagher. Just always linked, isn't he? Won't seem to go away. Do you actually think, James, that this summer we'll sign him? I mean, I've just seen links this morning come up about him. I mean, it's getting a bit boring now, isn't it?
Do you know why, quickly, Harry? Do you know why that is? It's because he was pictured with Madison at Wimbledon. That's the only reason
Of course
that
he
we
was.
have
I
been
did see
linked with
that.
him.
Do you reckon that's why? Oh, they put 2 and 2 together, don't they?
They just create out of nothing.
Yeah, I don't think it's. I mean, maybe at one point it could have been a good fit, but I think the ship's kind of sailed now. Like I said, we've got so many midfield players. We love a midfielder, don't we? Yeah, I can't see it unless Romero is going and they want to do a deal where Gallagher comes the other way, maybe. But yeah, I'm just speculating there. I can't
Do it with Julian Alvarez instead.
Yeah, but yeah, I don't. And with the Ramsey thing as well, I mean, I haven't really seen too many rumours about that, but I haven't really seen much of him to really think if he would be a good fit for our team. I mean, I think Kudus is probably a better option, isn't he?
I think the other thing with Jacob Ramsey is his injury record. He's been very injury prone over the last couple of years, and we don't need more of that.
No, you certainly
Agreed.
don't. Some players that will forever be linked, I think, to this club. Someone just mentioned there, Dybala, Gallagher, Traore. Yeah, I just can't leave them. Probably still admiring and exploring now as we speak. But we move on to Basuma. Again, latest news. Graham Bailey today said that Tottenham have informed Yves Basuma they intend to sell him this summer. It'll be interesting to see how that went. And have told his camp to begin working on a transfer. Paratici has offered him to various clubs in Germany, Italy and Spain. Gary, kick it off with you. Basuma, what do we do? Do we keep or sell? Because I think this is one that you asked you maybe earlier on the season, or asked any fan earlier in the season, it would have been like probably a definite sell. But as time's gone on and we've won the Europa League, it feels like more of a debate all of a sudden. So where do you sit on that one?
Very 50-50. I think similar to what you just explained. Yeah, beginning of halfway through the season, probably thought maybe it was time to go. But being outed in the press conference clearly lit a fire under him, and he started to perform well. Can Thomas Frank get the best out of him? I think he probably could. I think he's a really good coach. So I think it depends on where he sees someone like Archie Grace. I think Archie will probably move more into the middle. So I know he was trying to sign him at Brentford. So maybe he might play more. But for me, nothing can stop the development of Papassar and Bergvall, so he would have to be a bit part, and I think he would be behind Bentancur. So I think Bentancur's excellent. So I'd probably lean more towards selling, but I think it'd be dependent on what we've going to get for him.
Yeah, very good shout, James. Is it a tougher decision after winning the Europa League? Because I think he was quite important, wasn't he, in that campaign? Ancelotti spoke to him and kind of rallied him, said that he needs to be better, needs to work with him. And he was very, I think, instrumental in winning the Europa League. But do you also agree, sorry for the multiple questions here, do you also agree with Gary that it's the price that really matters here and what we can get for him?
Yeah, I mean, I think we seem to be on the same wavelength here. I think a few months back you'd say definitely sell, but then his performances did improve, but maybe still not good enough. Like you say, probably behind Bentancur. Bentancur himself has had, been unlucky with injuries, but before those injuries, he was looking like one of the main players in our starting 11. So it's a massive setback for him, but he looks like he's getting back to those levels. So Basuma, yeah, I mean, if you're going to be cutthroat, I think he does have to be moved on. Again, there's question marks over his character. When he came out with the doing the balloons and stuff, it's not a good look, is it? And you need responsible players, senior players in that, and he's coming into the senior age of a squad member, isn't he? I mean, maybe a bit harsh to move him on now. Maybe sort of look January, if he's still his performances are wavering, then maybe let's move him on in January. But it's always difficult to do that in that window. So yeah, I'd say him and Richarlison probably need to go, and then we're looking at bringing one or two in. But we really need to turn up the dial now, don't we? And just start getting players in. Like it's just get, like we've said earlier on in the pod, just need to start getting this business done.
I think now that the coaching staff's been announced, obviously Thomas Frank's there. He's meeting the players this week. He met some of them at the weekend. I think things will start to speed up quicker. Yeah, and I think more and more rumours will have come out with players moving on. I think Basuma and Richarlison definitely the two I'd probably move on. And then,
like you said, Gary, you still got Sarr, who
I think Sarr's fantastic.
Yeah, I'd keep Sarr over Basuma.
Yeah, and Archie Gray's going to be moved into that middle, and I think Bergvall is great. So I think likelihood we might play a 4-2-3-1 maybe, and I think that having those four in the middle would be okay. I'd like to see a more proven, like a proper winner in the middle, someone with experience. But again, are we going to spend that money? That would just be personal preference. But yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. That's interesting to hear. Joseph, I'll come to you. Talk to me about Basuma, but I also want to mainly focus on replacements, because I think we can all agree that we probably do ideally need a number 6, but who are we thinking that's realistic out there? Because I don't think there's that many, is there? Well, not within our kind of, budget, I suppose, or being realistic, because players like Adam Walton just sadly will never be considered by us.
Yeah, I mean, I do think Basuma needs to go. I think he was just too inconsistent last year, and he has been for a couple of years now. I think we were expecting him to kind of be. And I think it was such a good deal when we got him, and I think it was one that kind of came out of left field, and everyone was kind of like, "Wow, a good bit of business done by Tottenham, getting Basuma from Brighton for only about 25 million. It was quite a decent fee, but I don't think he's kind of grown into the player that we all wanted him to. I think he's been okay and he's been serviceable at times, but not always the player that we needed. So I'd be happy for him to go. I know there's been some links with him to possibly Juventus, which could be interesting. If he was to go to Juventus, there's obviously the possibility that we could look at Douglas Luiz, who hasn't really hit the ground running at Juventus since he moved from Aston Villa. Definitely one that we could look at kind of bringing back. One that I just saw is actually being linked with Roma and Inter Milan is Richard Rios from Palmeiras. He looks like a really top player. I think he'd be a great addition to Tottenham. And I do, obviously, I know James and Gary said about, you've got Sarr and you've got Bergvall, and I do agree we need to keep on developing them. But unfortunately, with the Champions League and with the Premier League and the amount of football that we've got, we do need some more experience in that midfield. We cannot just rely on Bentancur. So, I think Richard Rios would be great. I think again, like you said, Adam Wharton would be perfect, but it's one Tottenham are never going to pay the money for. There's possibly João Paulinho from Bayern Munich. Obviously, there's talks about him possibly leaving Bayern Munich, and we could be able to get him for a cheaper fee. So possibly, I think he'd be a very much an enforcer, like Gary said, someone who's really there to win the ball. I have one other in mind. What was it? Nico Gonzalez from Manchester City.
Yeah.
For some reason, there's been a couple of links about him leaving already, which seemed completely confusing. Maybe it's because obviously Reinders is there and you've got Rodri, and maybe it's just getting a bit crowded. But I think he'd be a good option as well. So there's definitely players out there. Apparently, again, Fabrizio Romano just tweeted about Richard Rios, so he would be my number one. I think he's even a Tottenham fan. So that would be a great sign in the Colombian. But he's valued at about 30 million, apparently Palmeiras want, and I would pay that in a heartbeat for him. So I think if Basuma was to go and we were to get him, I'd be ecstatic.
Okay, thank you very much. Before we wrap up, players are back after their loan spells in the 24-25 season. They include Brian Gill. Gary, do you think we've got to sell Brian Gill, or does he deserve a chance under Thomas Frank?
Yeah, move on. I'll be quick. I'll be to the point. Move on. Didn't too lightweight. Didn't show anything. I don't think I've seen anything from him that makes me want him to stay.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, I forgot he was still at the club. It's madness, isn't it? How some of these players seem to hang around for so long, like Lo Celso just never played and was just there forever. He needs to be moved on. You can't be loaned out again. Like Gary said, far too lightweight for the Premier League. Technically, obviously a good player, but he's not Premier League quality, and he needs to be moved on.
Yeah, absolutely. Joseph, do you think he's lightweight? The word used there. I think that would be fair.
Yeah.
I think some players just not right for the Premier League, are they? Gill doesn't look right.
Exactly
feel
that,
right.
Harry. Yeah, exactly that. I think he suits the Spanish game. He maybe might suit the Italian game a bit better as well, being a bit more technically gifted, but not the Premier League. He needs to be more physical. He might as well be that guy from the Big Bang Theory for Tottenham. I think that's who's linked it, suggested he looked like, wasn't it, that guy with the hair from Big Bang Theory? But
when he had that dirty tash and he looks a bit like Ringo Starr.
Exactly. But I think it's time for him to go. Unfortunately, hasn't worked out. But to be fair, there's some exciting players coming back from loan, like Jamie Donnelly, and again Vuskovic obviously coming in for the first time. There's some definitely players there that hopefully Thomas Frank will look at in pre-season and maybe give the opportunity to going into the year.
100%. I mean, even like Keeley returning from loan, and I think he'll probably go on another loan spell. So there's a lot of kind of movement that will happen.
There's a lot of young. We've got a lot of young good talent, haven't we? It's just how we nurture them and develop them. But like Joseph said, we still need a bit more experience maybe in that midfield.
I think we need a spine. a centre back, a
better
holding
one.
midfielder. Like, for instance, Rodrigo de Paul at Atletico Madrid, so good, just a nasty centre midfielder. Could probably cheer Romero up as well to get him to play. He's a lot of rumours of him being able to leave. He would be a decent to bring in. That nastiness in the middle that we need, but a good experience in the spine of the team, I think, will really help.
Yeah.
Well, that's definitely what Richard Rios would bring. That nastiness, playing in that Brazilian league. He knows what it's like. I think he's about 25 years old. He kind of coming towards the prime of his career. I think he would be perfect for Tottenham. And a 30 million fee. But again, the problem Tottenham have got is, we want to get Mohamed Kudus right now, and it feels like Tottenham are solely focused on this deal. And whilst this is happening, Inter Milan, Roma both want Richard Rios. You're going to lose out if you don't act quickly, if you don't try and get in there and put a fee in, and Tottenham don't seem to be in the position to do that. So it's a tough one. When you're trying to do a deal once, players will end up disappearing.
And it's a good point there that, players do play differently under different managers. Some people just get better under a different manager. So it might be that we'll be talking again in a few weeks that we probably haven't done anything because Thomas Frank's just getting a feel of the players.
The amount of times I've heard about, Thomas Frank wants to look at this player in pre-season because he believes that he might be able to do well at Tottenham. And to be fair, that might be true, but also it's definitely an excuse for Tottenham to not go and buy players, isn't it? Because we've got so many players that could do well.
Levy's telling him to do that, so he doesn't have to put his hand in his pocket.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's probably very true. Last but not least, Ashley Phillips. There's a reported like 6 million bid for him from clubs like Sheffield United. It could be like kind of talks. That could be the price that Spurs may consider to sell. But I don't see why you'd sell just for a few million profit. But that's how I feel. Gary, do you think we should sell him if we got a 6 million offer coming for Phillips?
I don't think I've seen enough to judge, if I'm completely honest. I haven't seen enough of him. I'd like to see him in pre-season, see how it goes. I know there was a lot of interest and excitement over his potential, but again, we seem to consistently do this, buy people on potential, but don't actually play them because the whole football alignment in terms of from the top to the bottom to the managers isn't in line with what we're trying to do. So I can't really judge until I see him play properly, unfortunately. I've only ever had him on Football Manager, and I've sold him on that. So if that answers the question, then okay.
No, that's enough. That's enough for me, absolutely. And that kind of wraps up nicely for this week's episode, a long one. So thank you very much for sticking with me. Very, big thanks to the panel. Mike had to jump earlier. I think we will absolutely forgive him because, when we start recording just past 5 a.m. in Australia, and he had to get his kid up for the day. So, proper commitment coming on. So that's absolutely fine. So make sure to check him out on all socials. But thank you as well to all of you three for coming on. Firstly, Joseph, thank you. Where can people find you across social media?
I'm mainly on X at the moment, Joseph THFC. So please do follow me. It's where I'm kind of putting out my opinions, getting involved in different spaces as well. So really enjoying doing all the podcasting and looking forward to more. Obviously going to be making more videos as well for the Scarfey Spurs Talk page, as well as maybe possibly starting my own channel at some point, maybe in the future, but we'll see if you get to that. But again, really appreciate coming on, Harry. It's been great getting involved with the channel, and I'm really looking forward to everything we're going to be doing in the future.
Absolutely, very exciting. You're always welcome to do anything. I know you have fabulous ideas and produce some fabulous content. So thanks so very much for giving us your time this evening. As you mentioned earlier, go check out that transfer edition. You've done that little video with just you. There's some fantastic name suggestions there. Funny enough, a lot we're linked with now and making big moves as well to other clubs. So some very good shouts in there. So make sure you are checking that out, as well as following Joseph on his personal socials. James, thank you very much for coming back on. Where can people find you?
No problem, Harry. It's been a pleasure. Always good to chat Spurs. I probably don't use my socials as much as I should. I don't post enough, but I'm on X and Instagram at Pastilio, Pastillio. I've also got my writing accounts on Twitter still, which is JPP Writing. But I mainly use LinkedIn now through my scouting. I'm still pretty a novice in terms of scouting, to be honest, still wet behind the ears. It's only been sort of just over a year of actively doing it after courses. But yeah, LinkedIn's a great tool to connect on that. And because of my journalism background, I've been writing a series of articles called Diary of a Scout. I think I've done 6 now, and the lads at Hooligan Soccer have kindly put that up on their website. So that's hooligan-soccer.com, the guys in America. So if you go on there, click on culture, you can find what I've written if you want to read my ramblings. But yeah, that's me.
Oh, epic. Love that. Go check that out, guys. That sounds really good. Thank you very much, James. Gary, appreciate you coming on a long one and a very solid debut from yourself. So thank you. Let's hope we can have some good debuts in the Spurs first team next season if we're going to sign anyone. Where can people find you on your own socials?
Yeah, I'm mainly on X, to be honest. Instagram is just photos, so you don't have to follow me there. Twitter is mainly sort of football content, a bit of wrestling, movies, Simpsons, or Football Manager. I've mentioned that a couple of times. But yeah, on Twitter at Gary R. Ward. But I appreciate you having me on. Sorry to have rambled on quite a bit. As we all know, we're very passionate about our team, and it's been good. I appreciate you having me.
No worries. That's what it's for. Platform to have your say, to vent your frustrations. That you'll feel better for it. So no, that's absolutely fine. Please don't apologise. If you want to follow me, you can at Harry Scarfe 22 across all socials. We'll be writing a lot more football articles for a few different pages this summer. So check that out. Make sure to like and subscribe to the channel. Check all these guys out on social media. And if you could nominate me for the Football Content Awards 2025, that would be fantastic. But no worries if not. Thank you very much. I will drop the link at some point in the chat. But I hope you enjoyed this podcast. We'll be back as always next Monday. Might be back before then if we get some Spurs breaking transfer news. That's at least what I hope anyway. But for now, a massive come on you Spurs.
Cheers, guys. Come on you Spurs.